I discovered my wife was having an affair. Not from a text message, not from a strange look, but from a card without my name. It's a gloomy Monday afternoon in Charleston, South Carolina. I came home early because it suddenly started raining, and it was when I put the key on the kitchen counter I saw it, a luxurious gold-plated card with my wife's name embossed in the middle. But my name is not there. There is no name for my son. And from that moment, my family, everything I thought I understood, began to fall apart gradually. I am Dominic, 36, living outside Charleston, South Carolina. I am a normal man, a main contractor, have my factory stable job, beautiful wife, good children. That's what everyone thinks. But no one saw the silence during dinner. Questions no one answers. The hugs became less and less frequent. I thought that was what a mature marriage was, that the rough patches were regular. Until that afternoon. I went home earlier than usual because of the sudden rain. I went into the kitchen and was about to pour a glass of water when I saw something lying precariously in the corner of the counter. It was a cream-colored card with embossed gold trim, the luxury I rarely get invited to at parties. I flipped it over slightly. The gilded text appears, "Party to honor new marketing director, Valerie Rousseau." Date Saturday. Location Bellevue Grand Ballroom Hotel. My name isn't there. Neither does our 6-year-old son Trevor. I stared at the card as if it knew the answer. I didn't know my wife was promoted, and I certainly had never heard of this party. The door is open. The familiar sound of heels rang out. Valerie walked in looking busy as usual, holding her laptop, her jacket still hanging off her shoulder. I held out the card without saying anything. She paused briefly, then exhaled, almost exasperated. "Oh, I thought I put it in the drawer." "Did you get promoted?" I asked. "Yes, CMO, but it's an internal matter. The company doesn't allow spouses, only employees." I was silent. Something's not right. Valerie doesn't hide her accomplishments, she lives for them. "Don't overthink. I'm late for the Zoom meeting," she said quickly, avoiding my eyes and retreating upstairs. I stood there, still holding the card in one hand, the other clenched so tightly that the veins popped out. I remember one time Valerie talked about her colleague Ryan. Ryan's wife once thanked Valerie for being invited to the company party. That party was at the Bellevue Hotel. I was speechless, not because of the party, but because she chose to hide it from me. She decided to erase my name from the most important day of her career, or worse, decided to keep me from being present. Phone vibrates, message from Beatrice, my mother-in-law. "My car broke down. Pick up Trevor from school. Make sure to buy him his favorite ice cream." The last sentence is written like a command. No thanks. No hello. I looked around the kitchen, once full of laughter, and now only heard the sound of rain outside the window. And I don't know, it's just begun. I drove to pick up Trevor, as Beatrice had told me. The boy rushed out of the school gate, waving his arms wildly, as if I were a hero who had just returned from battle. Even though my heart was in turmoil, his smile still calmed me down somewhat. "Chocolate ice cream? Teddy bear?" I asked. "Yay, but you have to eat one too," Trevor said, his voice shrill, his eyes shining. We stopped by the store near the school-bought ice cream, and then arrived Beatrice's large colonial-style house in the hills north of Charleston. Every time I come here, I feel like an intruder. The space is always too quiet, too shiny, and too cold. Trevor ran into the backyard where the swing set I once installed was located, and I returned to tell Beatrice I had picked him up. But just as I was about to call, I heard her voice. Glass room at the back of the house echoed through the half-open window. Valerie did the right thing. She didn't need to drag Dominic and that obnoxious boy along. I was dumbfounded. She's talking about me, about Trevor. Success does not come with cheap emotional burdens. Beatrice continued her voice as smooth as giving a speech. Dominic is a worker, not a partner. And Trevor, he's so much like his father, rough, clumsy, needs to be shaped before he completely breaks down. Another woman in the room, probably her friend, let out a small laugh. I still don't understand why Valerie isn't divorced yet. Beatrice immediately replied, she's waiting for the right time. After the merger, she will have enough standing to get rid of the things in her way. I held the window frame so tightly that my palms hurt. I thought Valerie was just stressed. The distance between us is due to the pressure of work, children, and life. But no, it was a plan, a strategy as discussed and plotted. I backed away, but small footsteps sounded behind me as I turned around. Trevor. I knelt. Do you hear anything? He nodded, then whispered, Grandma called me. Ugly. She told me not to let me go to the party because I embarrassed her. I hugged my baby so tightly that I was almost suffocating. A 6-year-old boy should not listen to such words, not even from my grandmother. Dad, Trevor hesitated. Last night I heard my grandmother call. She told someone that I was meeting a special friend named Paul, and that after the merger they will kick Dad. I felt my whole body cold. Paul. I've heard that name. Paul Anderson, CEO of the company where Valerie works. The person who just promoted her. Rich, elegant, influential people. The person Beatrice once mentioned with admiring eyes. The pieces of the puzzle begin to fit together. Valerie hides the card. Valerie comes home late many Wednesday nights. Valerie lied about the rules for inviting her husband. Valerie kept it a secret from both me and my son. I looked up at the large, luxurious, and empty house behind me. Then I looked down at my son, the only person who hadn't lied to me throughout this journey. I knew I needed to find out the truth. And I know I won't sit still anymore. Monday. I woke up earlier than usual. Valerie is gone, saying she had an important meeting about brand integration strategy. She kissed Trevor's forehead as if nothing was wrong. I don't eat breakfast, not because of anger, but because in my heart I know the truth is very close. That whole week I observed. Note: remember every detail. Every Wednesday night Valerie comes home late. It's always Wednesday. She said it was due to review quarterly plans with the board of directors. She placed her phone face down on the table, something she had never done before. Every time a call comes in, she goes out to the balcony, even though it's so cold that she shivers. I'm not a detective. I'm a worker. I know how to observe, how to read expressions. And everything about her was screaming that she was hiding something. I told her I needed to stop by the company on Friday to drop off some tax documents. Valerie hesitated but then agreed, as long as I arrived on time, because she was swamped. The office building exudes a cold, modern look. The receptionist looked at me like I didn't belong here. I left the documents at the counter and went to the hallway to wait for the elevator. And then I heard Valerie's assistant, a young girl named Shannon, talking on the phone in the hallway next door. The office door was not completely closed, the sound coming through clearly. No, that diamond bracelet was a gift from Paul, not from her husband. It's beautiful, about 2 carats. She said it was a reward for the past busy months. Wednesday night. Yeah, like every month, Lakeside Inn. Paul always has the suite booked a week in advance. I stood there, can't breathe. Lakeside Inn, hotel by the lake, only 20 minutes drive from home. We went there once the year of our wedding, but now she's back there, not with me. My throat is dry, but my hand was unconsciously clenched, as if my body understood this is no longer a feeling, but proof. That afternoon, I drove to Lakeside Inn. The reception desk is surrounded by polished walnut wood. A middle-aged woman wearing a polite uniform approached. I took a breath, smiled slightly, and said, as if joking, "Hello." I'm confirming if my wife has a reservation here for Wednesday night. Valerie Rousseau." The receptionist blinked, seemingly confused. I add, "She often goes with a customer named Paul Anderson. I think they're named after the company." After a few seconds of hesitation, the woman exhaled lightly and lowered her voice. "They're regular guests, Suite 204. I can't reveal the details, but every Wednesday night." I smiled lightly, as if to thank you, but my heart felt like falling into a bottomless abyss. I walked out to the car, closed the door, and sat quietly for nearly 10 minutes without starting the engine. I think about Trevor. I thought about the nameless invitation. I thought about Beatrice calling my son that obnoxious boy. And I thought, if this is a game, I will play it to the end. Not because I want revenge, but for me need to protect your child from a future built on lies. I called Nate, close friend since high school, currently working in security at Bellevue Hotel, where Valerie's promotion party will take place next Saturday. "Can you help me sneak into the party through the service entrance?" I asked. "What's going on?" "Dom. I can't say much, but I need the truth to come out in the right place at the right time." Nate was silent for a few seconds, then replied, "Then get ready. I'll be waiting for you at the back gate at 7 p.m. "And Dom, bring Trevor." I looked up. I saw myself in the rearview mirror for the first time in weeks. A man no longer silent. Saturday night, it was milder than usual. Valerie left the house at noon, her dress hanging in the back of the car, her hair curled perfectly, saying she was having an important meeting with Paul before the party. She quickly kissed Trevor's forehead, telling me not to wait for her to return because she might stay at the hotel overnight for convenience. I nodded. Say nothing. When the door closed, Trevor looked at me, his eyes sparkling with anticipation. "Dad, are we going?" I sat down, adjusted his collar, then smiled. "Let's go, but I won't go through the main door." We arrived at the Bellevue Hotel at exactly 7 o'clock in the evening through an entrance that normal people never notice. The back door, where the staff delivers cakes, cleans up trash, and carries tables and chairs. Nate, my best friend from high school, now works security here, standing ready with his access card, wearing a silver-gray uniform cap pulled low on his forehead. "This way," he whispered, his eyes wary. I took Trevor's hand and followed Nate through the damp, dimly lit hallway past the kitchen that smelled of barbecue and chocolate, and stopped at a thick curtain connecting to the stage area. I gently pulled the edge of the fabric, looking out at the gap. Paul Anderson was speaking on the main stage amid the warm yellow light. He was tall, well-groomed, in an ash-gray suit. His voice was deep and clear, each word carried weight as if he were speaking at a high-level conference. I heard him talk about Valerie's devotion, strategic vision, and outstanding contributions throughout the year. Then he finished with an introduction that made the whole room applaud loudly. "And now, congratulations to our new marketing director, Valerie Rousseau." Valerie walked out. Tight black dress, diamond necklace sparkling under the lights, hair tied in a high bun, each step exuding flawless confidence. The crowd stood up. Their applause was louder than fireworks. But she didn't see me. I see it all. At that moment, Beatrice, my mother-in-law, who was standing near the stage, turned around. Her eyes froze when she saw me standing there. She immediately turned away from the crowd and walked straight towards me, her high heels clicking on the stone floor like a sound of judgment. She hissed softly, loud enough for me to hear, but still kept a fake smile at the guests nearby. "What the hell are you doing here? You weren't invited. Do you want to ruin the biggest night of my daughter's life?" I looked at her, my voice calm. "You call my son that obnoxious son. I think everyone should know what you think about your grandchild." She turned pale. Her eyes darted worriedly because a few people nearby had begun to pay attention. But at that moment, I bent down, adjusted the buttons of Trevor's shirt, and then asked quietly, "Do you want to say anything?" "It's okay if you don't want to." Trevor looked at me, then turned to face the stage. It walked slowly. No one stopped it. No one thought a 6-year-old boy was walking towards the microphone. Valerie was startled when she saw Trevor appear, and Paul lowered his head and whispered something to his assistant. But Trevor came to the microphone. The boy's voice rang out small, but in that quiet space, each word sounded like testimony in court. "My name is Trevor. I'm Mother Valerie's son." A few light laughs rang out from the back seat in surprise, but Trevor continued, his voice still very sincere. "Your mother is very good at her job, but has a secret. She wasn't home on Wednesday night because she went to the hotel with Uncle Paul. Grandma calls him my special friend." The crowd turned from laughter to silence. Valerie stood still. Paul stiffened. The shareholders began to look at each other. Everyone's faces were as tense as guitar strings. Trevor turned to me as if waiting for confirmation that he should continue. I nodded. He turned to the microphone. "Grandma said I'm leaving your father to be a more important person after the company merger. I don't fully understand, but I know you won't live with me and Dad anymore." There was a long, suffocating silence. I walked up and put my hand on my child's shoulder. "You said it very well. Now let me tell you the rest." I looked straight at Paul, then at the people sitting in the front row. Valerie Rousseau did not climb to the position of director through ability. She achieved it by exchanging love for power, a shady relationship, a game behind her husband's back, a boy left behind by his mother. I don't need to say more. The surrounding eyes spoke for me. A shareholder stood up and called. Another person walked towards Paul with an angry face. Journalists pulled out their phones. Valerie did not move. Paul tried to get the microphone back, but no one cared about him anymore. I took one last look at my wife, or rather, the person who used to be my wife, and in that moment, I silently saw tears fall from her eyes, not out of remorse, but because everything she built with lies was accidentally destroyed by her 6-year-old son. We left the stage in silence without anyone leading the way. Trevor held my hand tightly as if afraid that everything that had just happened would disappear like a dream if he let go. But it's real. Every word, yucky and whisper behind my back, was shilling down my spine. The back door of the hotel closed behind us. Nate stood there saying nothing, just nodding slightly and opening the iron gate for us to leave. On the drive home, Trevor didn't say much. He only asked one question. "Are you mad at Mom?" I don't know how to answer. Perhaps anger is no longer the right word. I no longer want to smash, scream, or prove that I have been mistreated. I just feel tired. It was as if a part of me, the part that had tried to cling to a family image, had just turned off forever. 3 days after the party, Valerie arrived at the door with no makeup or dress, just a woman standing in the middle of the late afternoon with a long coat and red eyes. She carried no suitcase, no divorce papers, just a mother. "I didn't come to ask for your forgiveness," she said, low voice. "I came to say that I know I was wrong." I stood, leaning against the doorframe, saying nothing. Trevor looked out from inside the house, then quietly returned to the room. Valerie looked up at me, really looking at me for the first time in a while. I was caught up in the world my mother created. I thought if I were successful enough, I would be taken seriously, be someone more than just a girl from a tiny countryside married to a carpenter with no connections. I didn't reply. I had already guessed everything she said, but now hearing it from her mouth felt even more painful. Valerie continued, "Paul was fired. The board is investigating further. I was suspended, and my mother cut off contact after that night. She said I was the ultimate disappointment." She let out a small laugh, not out of joy, but bitterness. The first time I saw her losing control, I felt relieved, because I lost everything I said softly. She nodded, yes, but Trevor still has you, and I want him to know that his mother is trying to become a better person, not to get back, but to qualify as his mother. I looked at her for a long time. In her eyes, behind the layer of fatigue after months of calculating and hiding, there was still the Valerie I once loved. But I also know clearly that the man standing here today is no longer the innocent husband of the past. Trevor needs you, but he also needs stability. If you really change, I won't stop you from seeing your child, but I won't let him be dragged into any more instability. She nodded, her eyes red. I know. She left. Don't ask for another chance, don't beg for a comeback. And perhaps that's what makes me believe she's truly starting over, not for anyone else, but for herself. The next day, I received a call from Harold Montgomery, chairman of the board of directors of Valerie's company. He invited me to his private office, not out of curiosity, but out of responsibility. I want to apologize on behalf of the company for what happened, he said seriously but not coldly. The incident is considered a serious internal scandal. We are renegotiating the merger contract, and I would like to offer you and Trevor a grant. I was silent. It's not to silence us, he added. It's because we believe without Trevor everything would still be hidden under the red carpet. I don't refuse. I accepted, not for the money, but for Trevor, for the boy's future. I want my children to grow up knowing that valuable truth, even if the truth causes everything to collapse, something more substantial can grow from the rubble. 6 months later, Trevor and I had moved into a new, smaller but warmer apartment, with dinners filled with laughter and evenings spent reading books instead of listening to our parents argue. Trevor doesn't ask much about his mother anymore. But every time Valerie came to pick him up to go out, he returned a look of relief, as if he finally felt healthily loved by both sides. I still watched Valerie from a distance. Quietly. She was different. Her hair tied back, her eyes no longer burning with ambition but replaced with something closer to gratitude. I lost everything, a family, a faith, a part of honor. But now I have myself again. I have a son. I have peace. And sometimes that's all a man needs. Every morning, I wake up when the sky is still light gray, the first light of the day filtering through the small window of my new apartment. No more two-story house with a neatly manicured front yard, no more. Valerie's high-heeled footsteps passing through the hallway like cold wind. Here it's just me and Trevor. Sometimes soft morning music, a knife cutting fruit, and children's laughter echoing from the little bedroom. 6 months passed, I learned to slow down. I returned to small projects, making custom cabinets and desks for children at a school near my house. I work with my hands and with my heart. Some days are busy, some days are free, but different from before now, I find myself be alive, not trying to survive. Trevor went to school near home. He started making new friends. My son stopped being quiet and avoiding questions about his family. One day, when the teacher asked him about his hero, he said, "My dad. He doesn't know how to use PowerPoint but always tells the truth." I burst out laughing when listening to the teacher's story. Then there was silence for a long time. Valerie still comes on weekends. At first the exchanges were brief. Shuttle, hello, a nod. But gradually, the silence turned into genuine concern. Trevor likes his new math class. Do you need any help with your transfer? Small questions, but bring significant changes. She is no longer a proud woman, always looking ahead. Now, she stopped long enough to see. Seeing how happy and sad my son was. Seeing me, the person who was by my side, not perfect, but never turned away. One afternoon in May, she stopped by to give Trevor a set of materials to make a model volcano for a science project. When the boy entered the room, she stood and looked at my small kitchen. Much more cramped than the old one, but full of warmth. She didn't say anything for a while, then softly said, "I see a psychologist once a week, not to correct my mistakes, but to relearn how to live without having to prove anything to anyone." I don't interrupt, no compliments, not advised. I asked gently, "What do you see after each session?" She looked at me. The eyes that once sparkled with victory were now duller, more tired, but more real. "I feel weak, but at least I don't try to hide it anymore." I nodded, and that's strong. She smiled a small, sad but peaceful smile. Trevor ran out holding the model in his hand, shouting, "Mom, can this thing blow smoke?" She hugged her child, and I saw that between the two of them. Between the mistakes, the brokenness, and the tears, there was still a small, fragile thread, but not yet broken. Not to restore a marriage, but to keep a true family. Although not perfect, there is still enough love to heal. That night, I put Trevor to bed.